God has expectations for a Christian, and one of the many expectations for a Christian man is to provide for his own family. 1 Timothy 5:8. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. In other words, those who can provide for their families are obligated to do so. If we read all of 1 Timothy 5, we see that Paul is mainly speaking about caring for women who are truly widows, meaning those who have no children to rely on for assistance. Although this chapter also speaks about the relatives in a man's household, the main focus is about widows. However, today, rather than focusing on widows, we are going to focus on relatives in a man's household. Before we proceed, it is important to note that the Apostle Paul in this chapter states that a true widow who needs financial assistance from the church is one who has no children or grandchildren. The reason being is that if a widow has children or grandchildren, it is their obligation to look after the widows and their family, whether it is monetarily or anything else they may require. This is not a command for anyone to provide for relatives who are supposed to be providing for themselves, as this would make you an enabler of the sin of slothfulness, also known as laziness. But rather, this is a command to look after those who are truly in need. Family is the first line of care. As a result, this will free up resources of the local church for those with no family support, i.e., children or grandchildren to support them. God made us to work and to provide for ourselves and those in our household. Even unbelievers do this. Paul intentionally called a Christian who doesn't look after his own worse than an unbeliever, intentionally. This is a purposeful, provoking statement to highlight. A person cannot call themselves a Christian man whilst being cold and uncaring towards the members of his own household. This is not referring to a person who cannot look after his own for reasons outside of his own control. For example, health reasons. No. This is directed to a man who is intentionally not looking after his own responsibilities. God calls men to look after their responsibilities. God calls men to honor their commitments. God calls men to have a sense of duty. And ladies, if you have a husband who goes to work and comes home and pays this bill and pays that bill, thank God for him. A Christian man is not a lazy man. In our world today, we are quick to judge sins like drunkenness. We are quick to judge adulterers, fornicators, and thieves. But very rarely do you hear a sermon against laziness. And this is not applicable to all men, because there are men who are on the other side of the spectrum, who work too much and do not have time for leisure and rest. And that itself presents issues. Do not work yourself to an early grave. Rest is a necessity. However, that is a message for another day. Today, we are focusing on laziness. Nobody talks about slothfulness anymore. The Bible does not encourage slothfulness. Look at our Lord Jesus Christ. He was motivated and active whilst he was on this earth. John 9:4. I must work the works of him that sent me, while it is day. The night cometh, when no man can work. Luke 2:49. And he said to them, Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? Slothfulness is the opposite of being hardworking. Sloth is when you have something that you've got to do, or something that you should be doing, but you don't do it, because of the physical effort that is required to do it. Hard work and dedication. Hard work and dedication. Do it. If you feel like it, do it. If you don't feel like it, do it. Laziness. This is something that is seldomly preached nowadays. In our microwave generation, hard work and dedication is becoming a dying principle. People look at the task at hand and say, I can't be bothered. Or they start the task, and after a while, they say that will do, or that's enough. Every time you hear those three words, that will do, or that's enough, you are in the presence of a slothful person. God does not tolerate laziness. The lazier you become, the weaker you become. Laziness is a cycle. It is a hole that will drag you deeper and deeper and deeper. There is a tremendous amount of hardworking men who don't sleep enough, who need to sleep more often. But there are some men who make sleeping the objective of their day. Apart from the time of relaxing, resting, or taking a nap, as a result of tiredness, too much sleeping makes you weak, and too much sleeping is caused by laziness. The Bible talked against sleeping too much because it will result in poverty. Proverbs 24:33 and 34. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. This is how a lazy man rationalizes his neglect of duty. A little sleep causes no harm. Surely we all need a little slumber. The problem isn't the sleep of the lazy man. It is his neglect of duty. Sleep was created by God, but God did not create sleep for you to neglect your responsibilities. I remember my football coach used to have a saying, and it has stuck with me till this day. He used to say, treat laziness like the disease it is. If you have a family to look after them. If you have children to feed, do it. Thank God for fathers, real fathers, fathers that look after their own. Fundamentally, God hates laziness. It is a sin. How is laziness a sin? James 4:17. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin. This is simple to understand. If there are things you ought to do, and refuse to do them because of laziness, there is no other word for it but sin. This is not about judging you. This is about the Bible talking about being lazy and not doing the right thing. Jesus called people like this wicked. Laziness is also wickedness. Laziness is also wickedness. Anyone who is called wicked in the Bible is referred to as the enemy of God. From the parable of Jesus about the 3 servants who were given money to invest by their master. The first, who received 5 bags of gold, went at once and put his money to work, and gained 5 bags more. The second was given 2 bags of gold, and he worked and gained 2 more. The third servant, one we can call lazy because of his inability to work. He knew what he should do with the gold. He knew what was right, but he refused to do it, and that is a sin according to the Bible. The master arrived back from the journey and asked them about the talent. Matthew 25:19 through to 25. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. So I was afraid, and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Now I want you to look at the master's response. Matthew 25:26 and 27. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvested where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. God does not look kindly towards laziness, but our society somewhat encourages it. This is against the will of God. Laziness travels into different areas of your life. Everything affects everything else. You can't be lazy in this area and hardworking in another. No, laziness contaminates other areas of your life. Fundamentally, men of God are not lazy. God calls men to look after their responsibility. God calls men to honor their commitments. God calls men to have a sense of duty.